Hello, everyone.
Oh, there.
Welcome. It's so good to see everybody. Bill, good to see your face again, and all the other regulars. Welcome, family. I'm Nadia, and I'm a recovered alcoholic and super grateful to be here tonight. Super, super grateful. We are in the chapter, There is a Solution. There is a Solution, chapter 2, and we're on page 21. So just a little recap. We are going to talk about the real alcoholic and some of the behaviors and characteristics that that will. I'm just sorry, I'm looking at two bull swans here. Is that real? That's so cool. All right. We're on page 21 and we're on the second paragraph. Okay. But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, he may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. So let's go have a look here. There's quite a lot of description around the moderate drinker, the serious drinker, and the real alcoholic on pages 108. I'm not going to read all of it. I just want to touch on a couple of things there. It's page 108 through to page 109. There's type 1, there's type 2, type 3. And I think in the rooms you'll hear about these, type 3 drinker, type 3 alcoholic. That makes some really interesting reading that, and a lot of like turning those statements into questions, like, is that me? Turning those statements into questions for the newcomer or the prospect sitting in front of you when you're taking them through this work. It's also talking about, so the next couple of pages, well, in fact, all the pages from about page 1 to 21 is really focusing on the allergy. We're going to get into the obsession in a bit, but this is really going to keep repeating around how the allergy manifests. It says here at the end of that paragraph, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. And that's a phenomenon with us. We don't have that craving before we've taken that first drink. It's once we've had the first drink, we start getting pretty thirsty. Here is the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. That's a word we want to kind of keep because we're going to expand on that in the next couple of pages. There is no control when it comes to us and a drink. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. And the best way, when it says on the pages, I'm just having a look here, where it says you're armed with the facts and you make the approach. On this page 21, for each statement, so we're going to go through about 11 statements now that describe the real alcoholic. The first one is, he does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. And when you're sitting with someone in front of you, the way that we're going to win their confidence is when we speak about our own experiences and how I have done incredibly absurd, tragic things while drinking. So this is not a step 5 here tonight. And, we have to be very careful where we bring our mess to. But I'll definitely tell you that I've done some absurd and incredibly tragic things.
Rob, we lost Nadia, your host now.
Hello. This is like, I'm traveling through different, like to the black hole of space. You guys there? Is everybody there? Can I see? Yes. Okay, I am here. This is real. I'm here. Yay. This is going to be a wild ride tonight. Oh, my word. Incredible, tragic things while drinking. So, there's, I'm a mom. So I remember when I got into this work and I had to start doing some things. I was speaking about it today with another mom. We had a beautiful day together, some mothers in recovery. And we were speaking about how the mothering instinct is probably one of the most powerful forces of nature out there. I'm sure you've watched some of those Natural Geographics. If you watch a lioness and her cubs and they're messing about, could get dangerous, or there's a creature that's like a male lion that comes there, her instinct to protect her children will overcome her desire for food, her desire for comfort, her desire for safety. She will put her life on the line for those baby cubs. And that is that is paramount to any female in any species. However, when it comes to the human species and it comes to alcohol, the power of alcohol will overpower that instinct to protect your young. I'm not going to go into how I have featured in my children's lives, but I'm sure there's some mamas in here and some dads too who will know what I'm talking about. Number two, and we want to tonight, while we're sitting here, just let's just remember a little bit. Let's turn these into statements for ourselves and just refresh this experience. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I went and did a little bit of research on Robert Louis Stevenson, which wrote the story. I loved Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as a kid, I think, because I totally related with the desire to take something to become something that I wasn't. The problem is in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, he takes this potion. He's this insipid little, doctor, and he takes this potion and he becomes this muscular giant man who the women love, and he just takes over the social scene. And then he takes an antidote and he goes back to who he was, and he carries on with his normal day-to-day life in the day. Come nighttime, he takes his potion again, and he's out there and he's winning, winning favor and women and you name it, and he's living the high life. But the problem is the antidote stops working. So he starts ticking over into days in the state. And then it starts happening that he doesn't even need to take the potion. The persona just manifests on its own. And I think even now, when I reiterate the story each and every time, it really dawns on me how alcohol, I take the first drink, the drink then takes the drink, and then the drink takes me. And the writer of the story actually, he died of a stroke, but it does say that he struggled with alcoholism throughout his life. And I think this story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde really beautifully captures the torment that we have in our disease. So one day I can be super. Are you there?
I'm here. You remember that movie, The Nutty Professor, the original one? When Jerry Lewis throws down that concoction and he goes from being a shy, sensitive, the world is looking at me, honey, love. And that's kind of like alcoholism. We put the drink inside of us and it creates a new persona. We see the world in a different way. And at the end of the movie, he was destroying himself by getting his hands on the substance. And I want to say something for those who were not here last week. They make the distinction. He says he may or may not become a moderate or a continuous hard drinker. And we said if you walked into an atmosphere, a bar room, or a party, a social gathering, and you put an alcoholic and a hard drinker side by side, they look identical. But the hard drinker, although he's probably drinking into drunkenness, is drinking voluntarily. The alcoholic is drinking involuntary because as Nadia stated, the phenomenon of craving, the allergic reaction, the greater thirst that increases with each drink. And I just want to pose one question. There was no solution for alcoholism at the time this book was being prepared, written, and launched. Why is it that they spend 3 chapters and then throughout the book continue to remind us how devastating and debilitating this illness is? When the people who found AA, they were looking for anything. And yet, and still, in studying a little bit of the history, if they're not finding relief for the alcoholism, spiritual malady that's described here, they succumb to the desire again because their life is so painful sober that they will do anything in their power to convince themselves, it was just a bad 20-year drunk. I won't let it happen again, because the need for alcohol, the need to treat their alcoholism that they're not getting through this process or haven't found yet, comes in the form of the first drink or the bunch of drinks, obviously. But isn't that interesting, Nadia, that there was no solution? They've got the answer, yet they go to painstaking efforts to take out every possible loophole that you can come up with to think that it's ever a good idea to drink if you have these symptoms. I just think that's really interesting. If I'm bleeding to death and I go to the doctor and he's got a solution, I'm not going to study his credentials. I'm going to say, take care of the bleeding. But with alcoholism, we want to know if there's another door number 4.
Yep, we're those that don't play nice with each other, and even when there's a solution, we're like, so just on that same vein, Bill, thanks. There's a little anecdote that I want to share with all of you. So there are 2 curtains, and there are 10 people in the room, and the presenter says, right, 2 curtains, you'll get to make a choice, but behind curtain number 1 is happy, joyous, and free. Behind curtain number 2 is jails, institution, and death. Who would like to choose what curtain? And like 8 people in the room are like, curtain number 1, of course. And you've got 2 in the room going, let's think about that one. I can tell you who I know who I am. Like, the chance of having some fun, and that might be the consequences. I'll think about it. Right. Fact number 3, page 21. We're on the 3rd paragraph. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. When I picked up my first drink around the age of 14, that was the story. It wasn't just, I didn't just taste it and go, oh God, that's not for me. I drank it and the allergy kicked in immediately. I had to drink. My mother was going to fetch me at 10. I got dropped off when the party started, and my mother was going to fetch me at 10. There was curfew. I knew. Like, I still remember the first thing. I was like, I just looked at my watch. I was like, I have got 3 hours to have more of that stuff, because literally the heavens opened for me the first time I put my lips to alcohol. The heavens opened up for me. I have shared this with you guys before. Super dramatic. It's the truth. I promise you. And that was it. That was me for every, look, I didn't have the money or the means really to drink every day as much as I probably would have wanted to. Well, I didn't even know I could. But I tell you, the minute I could figure out that I could work and earn my own money so that I could drink and live the way I wanted to, until I could move out, I made a plan as quick as I could. I really did. I made a plan as quick as I could. And every time I drank, it was always Nadia who was in the corner puking. Always Nadia who was in the corner who had to be begged to go home, that the party had come to an end. More or less insanely drunk. All right, let's have a look here. 4, his disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature, but little. I've heard a lot of people who say when they drink, they get a little bit more, a little bit more relaxed, a little funnier, a little bit more lovable. No, that's not the case for me. I might be a happy, friendly person. The minute I start drinking, I fight, I argue, I break stuff, and I run around looking for trouble. Like, it is the exact opposite, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It is the person that I am when I'm drinking is the opposite of the person that I am when I'm not drinking. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day, just a day, not even like a year or a month or lots of drinking, just a day, just a quick bout of drinking. And he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. You know, I've driven into my best friend because I was convinced that she had eyes for my fiance at the time. I drove into her with the car. Disgustingly, dangerously antisocial. Sure. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment. I remember every single time I got the dream job the night before to celebrate the dream job, the fact that I was starting the next day, starting this job. First time I'm going to pull through those doors to go sign all my paperwork at HR. The first time I'm going to be sitting at my desk, and I want to celebrate the night before. And I rock up the next morning either late, spending the whole morning in the bathroom, and I must have reeked. That is how that would be my first day at work. Like at the wrong moment, I decide to get tight. Particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. He is often perfectly sensible and well balanced concerning everything except liquor. But in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. Oh man, if I knew that I had to go to a wedding and there was going to be that typical wedding table, 8 people, 1 bottle of wine, white, 1 bottle of red, 1 bottle of champagne, and the first thing I would do when that wedding invite came across my desk, I would phone up and say, right, what's the situation? Is it a cash bar? Is it bar on tab? And how many bottles of what have you got on the table? How many people are sitting at the table? 8. And then I would already have started the maths. Well, that means that's like
Like to finish your story, Nadia, but I suspect you were thinking if you were walking up to 8 people, how much
that
of your
I'd
alcohol?
chosen. Yes, are you there?
You froze when you were out walking up with the table to the table of 8, so I assumed you were calibrating how much each could get if you were going to get what you wanted. I'm trying to finish your story.
It's okay. Please jump in because it's very it's like it's stayed and jumpy on this side. So I don't know who's hearing what. Bill, you're with me. Thanks. Yeah. So I'd be figuring out how much alcohol there would be, and you can believe me that by the Monday, a week before that wedding, I would have picked a huge argument with whoever was my +1, and if I was a bridesmaid, I'd pick an argument with that bride, so that they would boot me out of the wedding, and I could go drink the way I wanted to drink. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. He is the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated, he ought to sleep the clock around. Man, when I read that, I was like, what? You guys are like me. I remember waking up too, and that dread of like, I just knew. I didn't even have to look at my phone or the light, nothing. I knew when I woke up, I knew it wasn't morning time yet. It was 2 o'clock and I had another 6 hours to get through. And there was no way I was going to pass out. There was no way I was going to fall asleep. It didn't matter how many sedatives I took, you name it. There was no way. This girl, and I drank enough to put an elephant down. Yet early next morning, he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. I've dug in dustbins. I've drank those half leftover beer tins that are lying all over the house. And guess what's inside those things? Yeah, you know, somebody's cigarette butt. I mean, oh, right, you down that because it's just you're desperate to get whatever's left over from the night before, if there's anything left over from the night before. When me in the house, probably not. If he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. I remember going to parties or barbecues, and I'd have my stash, because you've got to rock up with something. You can't, you've got to drink like a lady. You've got everyone to think that you're drinking like a lady. So I'll rock up with my bottle of wine. But in the car would be my stash. Because dear Lord Almighty, do not let my wine run out, and and the bottle stores are closed. I live in a small seaside town. Our bottle stores are not 24/7. I had to have backup stash in the car. As matters got worse, he began to use a combination. Yeah, you are. I was talking about this now. A combination of high-powered sedatives and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work. I used a lot of dry alcohol as well. I mean, it's not just alcohol. My problem is also cocaine and, whatever else can get me up so that I can drink better. Drinking enhances. I heard that in a share them the other day. That's brilliant. And like I said, the waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I've drank enough to put an elephant to sleep, guys, and I wake up at 2, bolt upright. And the itty bitty shitty committee is just going and going and going. And the arguments from 2 years ago, and it's just wild in there. And I don't want to put on a light because I don't want to wake myself up, right? It's crazy. Oh, thank God we're
Real quick,
free. Yeah.
Yes. So this is a long paragraph, and he's given us a description. And the more I read it, enough alcohol poured into anyone, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, is going to produce a change in the personality or the behavior. Some people become melancholy, some people get angry, some people they want to hug and love everyone. But he's talking about a certain case. And incidentally, I did not know what the word antisocial meant. I thought it meant they didn't get along well with people. It means that they don't like any type of authority, no one telling them anything that is not invited by them. So I can imagine that this person, it says they begin to lose all control, and they're doing absurd, incredible, tragic things because they have an insatiable appetite for alcohol. And the more they pour into themselves, although it's satisfying that craving for the moment, is producing the effects of alcohol on the human condition. So they're going to do some bizarre things that they can't ordinarily help but to do because they're under the influence of that much alcohol. But the allergy is demanding more and more and more. Hence, most drinkers, regardless how long they drink over whatever span of time, do not experience what we commonly call blackouts, which means, what does Bill Wilson call it? Time out of mind, where I'm getting from point A to point B, and I don't know how I got there. I just know that I got there, that I'm having conversations with people. How many people have come outside, or we've heard stories in AA where they found someone stuck to the grill of their car that they hit the night before and have no recall. That's not always brought about by drunkenness. It's brought about by the ability that they're not aware of what is going on in the present moment, although they're functioning. So conversations have been had, situations have been entered into. But I just think that it starts even at the doctor's opinion when it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect. No one really likes the taste of bourbon. I mean, some people might acquire a taste for it over time, but it tastes like crap. It burns the tongue. It's a poison. It's a chemical that you're pouring in through your mouth. You're not taking in pill form or some other type of intravenous introduction to the system. You have to taste it. And then he segues into alcoholism, where it talks about the manifestation of the allergy. I think all of us start off at the same point, and alcohol produces an effect for most people, including the alcoholic initially. And it talks about it again in a vision for you. For most folks, including us, alcohol means camaraderie, all that good stuff that goes along with the connection with our fellows, a good time, a feeling that life is good. That's what alcohol does. But with us, we want to duplicate it over and over and over to the point of self-destruction because it keeps eluding us. And the reason it eludes us is it's not really happening. It's the effect produced by alcohol. If the change were permanent, you would take one drink in your life and life would be wonderful. There'd be companionship, colorful imagination. But it's something that has to be repeated over and over and over again. And the more the tolerance increases with us, the more trouble that comes about by over drinking. And the very thing we sought eludes us no matter what. And that's the problem with alcoholism. One is too many and 1,000 never enough. And they say that elsewhere. I just thought I'd throw that in there because it could be confusing. If I say, guess what? You give my mom enough alcohol and she might behave dangerously and disgustingly antisocial. Don't tell me, give me my car keys. That's an antisocial attitude to someone trying to take my keys away if I'm not willing to surrender them. It's not brought about by drunkenness, or it's not brought about by alcoholism. That's brought about by alcohol. But with us, we become almost dependent. It feels like we need alcohol more than we need food. We need oxygen. We need to go to work. We need to take care of ourselves hygienically. It becomes the only important thing in our life, and it consumes us, unfortunately. So it's not good or bad. It's just the way it is.
Thanks, Bill. Yep, that's it. We're hanging around a lot here in the allergy. We're going to walk over to the obsession, which makes this, when we do stop, when we can stop, impossible. All right, we're on page 22, and we are at the 4th sentence on that first paragraph. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it, and he gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals, sanitariums, detoxes, sober houses, psych wards, rehabs, even meetings. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic. Our behavior patterns vary. Let's go look at where else it says this in the book. Page 567. Where it talks about our behavior patterns varying. Remember, we come in here, this program has been used for overeaters, gamblers, cocaine addicts, meth addicts, sex addicts, Debtors Anonymous. I mean, there are 267 programs out there. My sponsor can take a glass of wine or leave it. But when it comes to a man, she loses her mind and she will put a gun to somebody's head. Our behavior patterns vary. You know what I'm talking about. Page 567. It says here, just where it also reiterates what I'm talking about. The term spiritual experience, here it is. The terms spiritual experience, the very first paragraph, and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many forms. And the reason why I highlighted this is, you know, we get to take a lot of different people through this work. I've had the pleasure and the privilege and the honor of taking codependents through this work. I've had the pleasure and honor of taking someone with, you know, in overeaters through I don't have that issue, but I know that this book will solve their problem, because that promise and that instruction has been mentioned throughout this book many, many times. But this description should identify him roughly. Why does he behave like this? Here's a whole bunch of whys now, guys. And I, you know, this is, you can just hear frothy emotional appeal here, like it says in the doctor's opinion. You can hear friends, colleagues, family. Why does he behave like this? This dangerously antisocial, you know, drinking and drinking sedatives and not going to work, drinking at the wrong time, drinking and crashing their car, drinking and ending up in hospital with an OD, and you go back to it. Why does he do this? If hundreds, not just a few, us alkies have got about hundreds of experiences that have shown us that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering. Not just I suffer, my family, my colleagues, my friends, they all suffer from this. If they're coming into contact with me, they're going to have a tornado in their lives, uprooting everything. Why is it that he takes one drink? Why can't he just stay on the water dragon? Do you hear the frothy emotional appeal here? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? Now we are starting to move into the obsession. All right, so we know when we pick up a drink, we get thirsty, okay? We get thirsty regardless of the fact that we just walked out of rehab, we just walked out of the emergency center, we've got our kids just being ripped away from us by social workers. Now we know that, so now we're going to start looking at the obsession. I can stop, but I cannot stay stopped. And then when I promise you, when I swear that I want to stop, I'm done. You hook me up to a lie detector test, it's going to say Nadia's telling the truth. But where are you going to find me the next day? Off to the races. So let's go. Let's go into the obsession. Let's go see what they say. Perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. I've always heard that why is one of the questions, the only question that's not ours to answer. That's God's. Why is God's? Because he's got this gigantic plan that we're not privy to. We're just playing a part. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why. Once a certain point is reached, Bill was talking about this now, you can apply enough alcohol into anybody. Not everybody's going to have this reaction. Little can be done for him. We cannot answer the riddle. The guys from AA couldn't answer the why. Why did I become alcoholic? What was it that happened to me? But that's not important. The fact is that we have become alcoholic, and here's the solution. We have to understand the problem so that we can accept the solution. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, no fun, right? Controlled drinking is the worst. I mean, that is zero fun, staying away from drink, because, you know, the cops are on your case or the social workers are on your case. We are equally positive that once, there's that key word, once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens, both in the bodily and mental sense. And the last 20 pages have spoken about this physical reaction that we have to alcohol, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. We can stop, but we cannot stay stopped. And then just stop there and ask yourself and your sponsee, is this your experience? We want to get these people saying, yes, this is me. Yes, I've thought like that. Yes, I've drank like that. I must have the solution. Right, so now pages 23 to pages 43, the next 20 pages, we are going to venture into the obsession of the alcoholic mind. And even though our lives are burning up around us, our children are gone, the love of our life is gone, we've got half a stomach left in our system, we've got parents who've disappeared, for the next 20 pages, it's going to explain why we will continue going back to that drink, even though it's not working anymore. It stopped working. these observations, what observations? We've just spoken, but we've just observed what the allergy, how the allergy manifests in us, okay? So the obsession, the observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Doesn't that remind you of the businessman? We're going to talk about him now. And also that mental blank spot that we have, you know, that line that we hear sometimes, just play the movie forward. There's no remembering the pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization that we've gone to. There is no remembering it, guys. Why? Let's go look. Let's go see. Therefore, whoa. Yeah.
When you read that sentence, these observations would be academic and pointless. We could teach it in a book. When someone has an allergy to peanuts, strawberries, IVs, they document it, they teach it, and the person does everything in his power to avoid having contact with that element, especially the outdoor stuff. I mean, you know what you're putting into your body, or should, but there are some people that are so sensitive, and that's what we'll call an allergy, a sensitivity to something, that if they go into a restaurant, restaurants have to post on certain menu boards, this may contain peanut oil, this may have this in it, or they'll ask, does that strawberry souffle have strawberries? Obviously, but the point is, they make sure that they don't put anything into their body once it has been academically or medically determined that they have an allergy, an abnormal response, a sensitivity to certain food or natural products. And now it's getting into these observations. We've observed it. Every time Paulie picks up a drink, he tends to get thirsty. He overdrinks and usually gets into some type of trouble. Not every time, but every time he's had those consequences, it's always started with a drink along the way. So what we would say to Paul or Nadia or Rob or Bill, you have a problem with alcohol, and I agree. You ought not to drink, and I say, I know. Now it would stop right there if we didn't have this next element of the illness, because although my wife says, if you drink again, I'm going to leave you, I say, I know, as I'm heading to the bar. So what I know, what I'm aware of, cognitively or academically, is not sufficient. So now they're going to get into why that is so.
Thank you. And just to reiterate what Bill's just said, on page 39, the second paragraph, in the squiggly writing, remember that's super important writing. But the actual or potential alcoholic, we've just described him over 2 pages. We've just spent at length describing the actual or the potential alcoholic. And if that's you, that's why you're here with us tonight, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. Okay, so why? Let's go. This was the clincher for me. When I stepped into these pages the first time, this is when everything inside of me stopped dead in its tracks. And you know, when you get caught smoking as a kid, that ice cold grip over your heart, you're like, shit, you're in a lot of trouble. It dawned on me that I was in a truckload of trouble. Not the fact that my kids were gone, not the fact that I was living in a container in the desert. When I realized that my mind was out to get me, my mind was hell-bent on getting my hand around that bottle, getting my hand on that baggie, getting my hand on that man. When I realized that I had no power, there was no affirmations, no self-help book, no meditations, no juice diet, no nothing that was going to get me to get a handle on my grip on my mind, that ice cold sinking feeling hit. And then I was even more determined to do whatever it took. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. Huh? I thought it was all the alcohol I drank. I thought it was all the crazy men that I date. No, Nadia, your problem, honey, is in your mind. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Man, have you met my ex-husband? Have you met my boss? Have you met my mother? Have you met my father? Do you hear what happened to me? I would give you 100 alibis on why I had to drink the way I was drinking, right? Sometimes these excuses, sometimes they had a certain plausibility, but none of them really makes sense in the light of the havoc, the flames around me, the roof that I've just pulled down on my head. None of those excuses make sense that I would get up and continue doing this. Honey, I'm going to leave you. You and I are getting a divorce. I know. And there I go. Watch my dust trail over to the nearest bar.
So
They
is it
sound like
because
the philosophy.
is it because of his abundant experience shows him that if he drinks, this is going to happen, and because he can't not drink or cannot not drink, he has to give an excuse for the attendant consequences that are about to take place, because it doesn't make sense. He obviously concurs that it's the first drink that gets him going, yet there is drinking again. So he may give you 100 good reasons, excuses, or alibis because he's got to justify what's about to take place. This is at the point where we know something's wrong with us. You've known it for a long time watching us, but now we know there's a problem. I don't have to justify getting up in the morning and making a cup of coffee. I don't have to give anyone an alibi to do that because coffee doesn't cause problems in my life. I just have to ask on the record, where do I find a girl like your sponsor that's willing to fight for me?
Yeah. Woo. Yeah. We don't need to make excuses for our cup of coffee in the morning, but we definitely need to make excuses for the way we're drinking. If you had a life like mine, you drink the way I do. But like Bill said, what dawned on me here when I read this was that I was now drinking to get over the consequences that drinking caused in my life. Drinking was my best friend, my lover, my best friend, my panacea, my genie in a bottle. Drinking did for me the things that I could not do for myself. One of the 9-step promises, right? We'll come to realize that God can do for us what we could not do for ourselves. I could not do the stuff that alcohol did for me. But it stopped working. And I'd lost the power of choice and control. And now I'm drinking over the shit that alcohol's caused in my life against my will. I mean, come on, that is a special kind of hell. It's like the man who bangs himself on the head with a hammer. Here it goes. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious, which is false news, this is false news reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic. Yeah, don't you tell me nothing about my drinking. Don't you tell me how should be, or can't you see? Don't challenge me about my drinking, because this is what's going to happen. I'll laugh it off, or even more sinister, I will become irritated and refuse to talk. How hath no fury like a woman who's been told she needs to drink like a lady. Don't tell me I have a problem. Don't tell me I have to give you my car keys. I can drive drunk. I can drive, I'm fine. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is usually, yeah, we're going to start going into the thinking. So I would love all of you, please get a special color highlighter, a special I'm going to come to you now, Bill, a special kind of pen. make bubbles around this every time we start seeing a word that connotates thinking, because this is what it's all about. And this truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Over to you, brother.
Where it said that one sentence, sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility. They almost make sense. You lost a child. You just went through divorce court. And that has nothing to do with alcoholism. Say it's a tragic thing that most people would take a couple drinks to take the edge off. That's the plausible excuse they're talking about. I mean, it's my wedding. You're supposed to drink. The problem is I'm going to go home with the bridesmaid rather than my wife, and we're going to get off on a bad foot. What they're saying is it may be plausible to the average ear, the tickling of the average ear would say, yes, I understand that was tragic. But in light of what always happens is as soon as I put alcohol of any form into my system, it changes something in both the bodily and mentally sense, the book says, which makes it virtually impossible for me to stop. I think, Nadia, even if just drinking in perpetuity was the problem, most of us would still be drinking. But what happens is our body starts to change, and I'm not going to get into the medical aspect of decreased tolerance and how it warps the brain and dries it out. But the consequences that come along over time, I promise you, if I drank the first time in my life, had one beer and killed a family in a DUI manslaughter and spent the next 30 years in prison, I'd probably never drink again. But this is a chronic, progressive, and eventually fatal illness. It also is conditioning. When I get drunk initially, I usually don't get into trouble that I do after, say, 20 years of pretty good drinking. Because what happens, the inhibition goes, I'm drinking, one may say, to live and living to drink. And nothing else matters but pursuit of that. And it even talks about early on in our drinking careers. We believe that many of us could have stopped if there was sufficient reason. Well, facing 15 years in prison is a sufficient reason. But by the time my mind has warped into a necessity, a need of something that's feeding off the alcohol that's not in me yet, the conditions don't seem to come into mind. And even if they do, it's like hitting myself on a hammer, like you said, this fallacious reason. It makes no sense to anyone but me because I must have the juice. I feel non-human without it. It's my survival. It's my survival chemical, and I don't realize it. So it's plausible excuse or not, in light of what always happens, which means I end up on a bigger blunder than ever. No matter what excuse I come up with to take that first drink, that's insanity. And that's what they're making clear here. I just gave everyone time to go out and get that marker. You told them, go get a marker. If they don't have it, they want them all go to the store at once. The meeting would have been ghosted.
You just made me think of something. You made me think of the times when I knew I was on my way to meeting the dealer. I knew I was on my way to the bar or the bottle store. And that gnawing feeling of like, I need to get out of myself. I need the skin to fit properly. I need this mind to quiet. Knowing that I'm on my way to the dealer, knowing that I'm on my way to the bar, that feeling would go away. I haven't even touched this stuff yet. It's pretty powerful, right? All right, page 33. Y'all got your markers? Because we got to mark this thinking stuff, because this is it's plain insane thinking. I came here for my drinking and I stayed for my thinking. You've heard that, right? Right. So some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time. But in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. There comes that point where we're just like, I don't know how I'm back here again, beating ourselves up again. Like how I I'm fine. I'm telling everyone I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. And this is like, that's fine. I mean, this is not an issue. I'm great. But in your heart of hearts, this is when that gnawing sensation comes that there might just be, someone might just be the boss here. And it's not me anymore. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that needs a circle. That's a bit, that's explaining some kind of thinking. Obsession that somehow, someday, we will beat the game. How does it say that in the book? Page 30, first paragraph. Page 30, first paragraph, it says, the delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. Just on a side note, it also means that the stuff we got to do in this program, we don't get to just live like normal people anymore. There's a lot of action. So we don't get to go to work like normal people. We don't get to be parents like normal people. We don't get to go to our own parents like normal people. Sorry, guys. The delusion that we are like other people has to be smashed. Because we will, this obsession, we will chase it to the gates of insanity or death. And there's a lot of work that we got to do to stay spiritually fit. But they often suspect they are down for the count. That's that hopelessness that's starting to come in. That beautiful gift. That beautiful, beautiful gift that brings us to this place where we will accept help. But we're not there yet. We're going to get there. How true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their family and friends, Bill just said it now, sense that these drinkers are abnormal. Everybody around us sees it first. Just like when we start getting better, everyone around us starts seeing it first before we do. But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. I don't have the will to do this. But you know what, guys? I don't want to make you entirely hopeless. We're going to end here. Can I just give you a little bit of hope? On page 85, we don't have the will to stop alcohol, to stop drinking. But what we do have is here, it says, page 85, 1, 2, it says that we can exercise our willpower. So it's not entirely hopeless. It's not entirely like a negative thing here. Here's some great news. We can exercise our willpower, which we have zero of when it comes to drinking. Along this line, all we wish, it is a proper use of the will. And that's when we carry the vision of God's will into our activities. Sorry, I just wanted to give you a little bit of, I just wanted to end it on that note. We ain't got no willpower when it comes to alcohol, but we definitely have got a lot if we align it with God's will. And we're going to get there. That's what this is all about. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Now I get to keep quiet